Commander Jin was having his morning coffee when the communication array started beeping like crazy. He'd been stationed at New Terra Colony for 3 years now, and usually the only messages they got were supply requests from Earth or updates about mining quotas. This was different. The signal was coming from deep space, and it wasn't human. What the hell? Jin muttered, setting down his cup and walking over to the main console. The holographic display flickered to life, showing symbols he'd never seen before. Strange, flowing characters that hurt his eyes to look at for too long. The translation software kicked in, and Jin felt his blood run cold as the alien text converted into simple Korean words floating in the air. He read it once, then twice, then a third time, hoping he was seeing things wrong. "Governor A," he called out, his voice echoing through the communications center. "You really need to see this right now." Governor A was sitting at her desk in the corner, surrounded by stacks of mining reports and colony maintenance schedules. She looked up from her tablet, probably expecting another complaint about the water recycling system or the food processors acting up again. "What's wrong, Jin? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," he said, gesturing toward the holographic message. "We've got visitors, and they're not friendly." They stood up and walked over, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She was a tough woman who'd helped build this colony from nothing, survived equipment failures, dust storms, and food shortages. Jin had never seen her worried about anything, until now. Her face went completely white as she read the message. "The Zephyrian Empire," she said slowly. "Who are they?" "Never heard of them," Jin replied, "but they seem to know about us. They're giving us 72 hours to hand over everything we've built here and become their slaves. Or else they'll kill everyone." A stared at the message for a long moment. Around them, the colony hummed with its usual sounds. Miners getting ready for their shifts, children playing in the recreation areas, families just trying to live their lives. 3,000 people who had no idea that aliens even existed, let alone that they were being threatened by them. "Governor," Jin asked. "What do we do?" A's expression hardened. She walked back to her desk, opened her personal communication channel, and started typing a response. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "Send this back to them," she said. Jin looked at the screen. The message was just one word. "No. That's it?" he asked. "That's it," I confirmed. "We're humans, Jin. Nobody threatens our families." 20 minutes after sending their defiant reply, Governor A pressed the emergency button that every colonist hoped would never be used. Red lights flashed throughout New Terra Colony as the evacuation alarm echoed through the corridors. Families grabbed their emergency bags and headed for the underground shelters, just like they'd practiced dozens of times. But this wasn't a drill. The emergency council met in the deepest bunker, 50 meters below the colony's main structure. The concrete walls were thick enough to survive asteroid impacts, and the room was packed with communication equipment, weapons, and enough supplies to last weeks. A looked around the metal table at the 3 people she trusted most in the colony. Engineer Wu was already pulling up construction blueprints on his tablet, probably figuring out how to turn mining equipment into weapons. Security Chief Min had his sidearm on the table and was checking the colony's defense systems on his portable screen. Communications Officer Yu sat with her headset on, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she coordinated with Earth. "So," A said, breaking the tense silence, "we just told a galactic empire to go to hell. Anyone want to change their vote?" Min looked up from his screen and laughed, though there wasn't much humor in it. 3,000 miners and farmers against aliens who can travel between stars. They probably think we're some kind of joke. "Good," Wu said, not looking up from his blueprints. "Let them underestimate us. These aliens have never met humans before. They don't know what we're capable of when someone threatens our families." Yu pulled off her headset and turned to face the group. "Emergency signal is away. Earth Command will receive it in 6 hours. Maybe less if the relay stations pick it up faster. But here's the thing, even if they send help immediately, it'll take at least 6 days for any ships to reach us. I felt her stomach drop. 72 hours versus 6 days. The math was simple and terrifying. So we need to survive for 6 days, not 3, she said slowly. Against an enemy we know nothing about, with weapons we've never seen. Min was already nodding. The colony has defensive barriers, and we can use the mining tunnels as fallback positions. The processing plant has some heavy equipment we can modify. Wu finally looked up with a grim smile. Governor, my grandfather fought in the Korean War with nothing but an old rifle and pure stubbornness. My father survived the resource wars when half of Asia was starving. We're humans. Surviving impossible situations is literally what we do best. You put her headset back on. Besides, these aliens made one big mistake. What's that? A asked. They gave us time to get angry. Admiral Haon was in his office at Seoul Defense Command, reviewing patrol schedules and budget reports, when the priority alert started screaming. In 30 years of military service, he'd only heard that particular alarm twice before, both times during major asteroid threats to Earth. He dropped his coffee mug and rushed to the main command center. Sir, Lieutenant Park called out from the communications station. Emergency transmission from New Terra colony. It's first contact, sir. Hyun felt his world shift. First contact. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries, sending out radio signals, building bigger telescopes, dreaming of the day they'd finally meet another intelligent species. He'd imagined that day would involve scientists and diplomats, maybe some kind of peaceful exchange. He definitely hadn't imagined it would start with aliens threatening to wipe out human civilians. The message was short and brutal. Unknown aliens calling themselves the Zephyrian Empire had given the colonists 3 days to surrender everything or die. 3,000 men, women, and children, including families with young kids, were being held hostage by creatures they'd never even known existed. Get me President Kim on secure channel, Hyun ordered, his voice steady, despite the chaos in his mind, and activate the Deathworlder protocol. Authorization, Hyun Savans. Captain Na, his longtime aide, looked up from her station with wide eyes. Sir, the Deathworlder protocol. That's 4 total war scenarios. Someone just threatened to genocide human civilians, Hyun replied coldly. If that's not total war, I don't know what is. The Deathworlder protocol was humanity's ultimate military response, designed for the worst possible scenario, an existential threat to human survival. Within minutes, every military base in the solar system received the same message. All leave. Cancelled. All ships to combat readiness. All available forces to converge on Sol immediately. On Mars. Admiral Jun was inspecting his flagship when the klaxons started wailing. His third fleet, 20 heavy cruisers and 50 escort ships began emergency departure procedures. Fuel trucks raced across the red dust as crews loaded weapons and supplies at record speed, near Jupiter. Admiral Tay's mining protection fleet changed course instantly. These weren't pretty parade ships, they were working vessels, built to fight pirates and protect cargo haulers in the dangerous outer system. Their hulls were scarred from real combat. Their crews experienced an actual warfare from the outer colonies. Patrol ships and defense platforms began the long journey toward Earth. Every available warship, from massive battlecruisers to small reconnaissance vessels, started moving. How many ships are we mobilizing? Captain Na asked, watching the tactical display fill with moving dots. Admiral Haon stared at the screen, thinking about 3,000 colonists facing an unknown enemy. All of them, he said quietly. Every single one. Sensor operator Velthak had been staring at his screens for 12 hours straight, and his eyes were starting to hurt. The Zephyrian monitoring station orbited a dead planet at the edge of what the primitive humans called the Sol System, keeping watch for any unusual activity. It was supposed to be boring work, just making sure the Deathworlders didn't try anything stupid before the deadline. But something weird was happening. Commander Zekran Velthak called to his superior, who was reading reports about their glorious empire's latest conquests. I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout this system. Multiple sources, getting stronger by the hour. Commander Zekran barely looked up from his tablet. Probably solar flares or asteroid movements. These primitive systems are always chaotic. The Deathworlders haven't even developed proper space travel yet. Velthak frowned at his readings. The distortions were too organized, too purposeful to be natural phenomena. But arguing with a commander was a good way to end up scrubbing waste processors. So he kept his mouth shut and kept watching. He had no idea that 3 light-years away, Captain So was watching him right back. So's reconnaissance ship was invisible to Zephyrian sensors, built with human stealth technology that had been tested against the most advanced detection systems on Earth. Her crew of 12 specialists had been observing alien fleet movements for 2 days now, learning everything they could about the enemy. Captain, reported scanner operator Lee from his station. I'm getting detailed scans of their ship designs. These things are incredible. Perfect geometric shapes, no wasted space, energy efficiency that's off the charts. So, studied the elegant alien vessels on her main screen. They looked like works of art floating through space, all smooth curves and glowing energy fields. No visible weapons, no armor plating, no battle damage. They were absolutely beautiful. Pretty, she agreed, then turned to her weapons officer. Bang, what do you think of their defenses? Bang had been analyzing alien shield technology for hours. Strong against energy weapons, Captain. But I'm not seeing any physical armor. These ships are built for efficiency, not combat. Exactly, So said, thinking about her own vessel. Her ship was ugly by comparison. Thick armor plates welded over previous battle damage. Redundant systems stacked on top of each other, weapons mounted wherever they'd fit. It looked like it had been through hell, because it had. They've never fought anything that actually wanted to kill them, she continued. Look at those designs. They're built by a civilization that settled disputes with words, not weapons. Meanwhile, at the rally point near Pluto, the human fleet continued growing. Ship after ship emerged from hyperspace, their scarred hulls telling stories of humanity's violent history. Patrol Leader Morden was having the best assignment of his career, floating at the edge of primitive space, watching Deathworlders scramble around like insects before his empire crushed them completely. His ship, the Graceful Light, was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, gleaming white hull, perfect energy shields, weapons that could slice through asteroids with surgical precision. It was supposed to be easy patrol duty. Watch the savages, report back, maybe fire a warning shot or two if they got too close. Morden had been bragging to his crew about how they'd probably get medals for participating in the conquest of these backward humans. Then Captain Lee's scout ship appeared on his sensors. What is that thing? Asked his weapons officer, staring at the human vessel with disgust. The ship looked like someone had welded scrap metal together in a junkyard. Thick armor plates were bolted over older armor plates, creating layers of protection that made no aesthetic sense. Burns and impact craters covered the hull, and the whole thing looked like it had been through multiple wars. Typical Deathworlder construction, Morden replied with contempt. No sense of beauty or efficiency, just crude materials hammered together. He opened a communication channel, expecting the primitive humans to beg for mercy. Primitive Deathworlder vessel, this is patrol leader Morden of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Captain Lee's response wasn't words. It was a spread of missiles that appeared on Morden's sensors, so fast his crew barely had time to react. "Shields up," he screamed, but the human weapons were unlike anything in Zephyrian tactical databases. Instead of energy beams that shields were designed to deflect, these were crude physical projectiles filled with explosives. They slammed into the graceful light like hammers, each impact sending shockwaves through the elegant hull. Morden fired back with his plasma cannons, beautiful streams of blue energy that should have vaporized the ugly human ship instantly. But Lee's vessel just absorbed the hits, its thick armor glowing red-hot but holding firm. The human ship had been built to survive in space around Earth, where radiation storms and asteroid impacts were daily hazards. "Impossible," Morden whispered, as Lee's second missile salvo tore through his ship's elegant armor, like it was made of paper. His last transmission to fleet command was barely coherent. "They don't fight like civilized beings. No warning shots, no negotiation, they just attack. Their ships are primitive, but they won't die, and they fight like they want to kill everyone." The transmission cut off as Captain Lee's third salvo found the graceful light's reactor core. 72-hour deadline came and went like a ticking bomb. Governor A sat in her underground bunker, watching the chronometer count down the final seconds. Around her, the emergency council waited in tense silence. They'd done everything they could, evacuated civilians to the deepest shelters, rigged mining equipment as makeshift weapons, and sent their desperate message to Earth. Now all they could do was wait. "Governor, Communications officer," you said, quietly, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system. It's the Zephyrian fleet." On the surface, Admiral Quintal commanded his attack formation with supreme confidence. 50 ships of the Zephyrian Navy, each one a perfect example of advanced alien engineering. His crew was excited this would be their first real combat against primitive Deathworlders, and the stories would make them famous throughout the Empire. "Target the main colony structures," he ordered his weapons officers. "A few precision strikes should convince these savages to surrender." But as his fleet moved closer to the human colony, something impossible appeared on his sensors. Ships, hundreds of them, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation around the small human settlement. What is that?" His navigation officer stammered, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Governor A felt her bunker shake as the massive human fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly above them. Her communication console crackled to life with a familiar voice, Admiral Hayan from Earth Defense Command. "Governor A, this is Admiral Hayan of the Sol Defense Fleet. Sorry we're a little late. You threatened our people, and we don't take kindly to that." Through the bunker's small viewport, I could see the shadows of enormous ships passing overhead. These weren't the clean, elegant vessels she'd seen in Zephyrian transmissions. These were working warships, battlecruisers with thick armor plating, destroyers covered in weapon mounts, carriers that looked like flying fortresses. Every single ship told a story of violence, plasma burns from pirate raids, impact craters from asteroid strikes, welded patches where enemy weapons had punched through holes. These vessels had been built in the cosmic hellstorm that surrounded Earth, designed to fight and survive in conditions that would destroy most alien ships. Admiral Quintal's confident smile disappeared as he realized what he was facing. This wasn't a handful of primitive colonists with mining equipment. This was the entire military might of a species that had learned warfare in the most dangerous solar system imaginable. "How many ships?" his weapons officer whispered. The tactical computer finished its count. 467 human warships, sir. All combat ready." Admiral Quintal expected the battle to be quick and clean. Zephyrian warfare was an art form: precise energy beams, calculated strikes, elegant maneuvers that minimized casualties on both sides. Civilized species fought until one side clearly had the advantage. Then the losing side would surrender with honor intact. The humans had different ideas. The first exchange of fires seemed normal enough. Zephyrian plasma cannons lanced out in beautiful blue streams, striking human ships with surgical precision. Several human vessels took direct hits, their ugly armor, plating glowing white-hot, under the assault. Then something impossible happened. The damaged human ships kept fighting. Captain Park's destroyer took a direct hit that vaporized the entire front third of his ship. The elegant Zephyrian weapons officer smiled, marking another kill on his display. But then Park's destroyer spun around and fired everything it had left, missiles and railgun rounds tearing into a Zephyrian cruiser. "How is that ship still operational?" Quentel's navigation officer asked in confusion. "It lost primary systems, life support, half its crew compartments. Humans build redundancy into everything," his aide replied, studying the tactical data. "They have backup systems for their backup systems." Admiral Chen's massive battleship was even worse. A coordinated Zephyrian strike blew apart the entire command bridge, killing dozens of crew members in the explosion. By all civilized rules of warfare, the ship should have surrendered or retreated instead. John transferred command to engineering and kept fighting. His ship looked like a floating wreck, trailing atmosphere and debris, but its weapons never stopped firing. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with damage that should have been impossible to survive. Vessels with reactor cores exposed, ships missing entire sections, destroyers held together by emergency force fields and pure stubbornness. "Why don't they retreat?" Quentel whispered, watching a human frigate explode in a brilliant fireball while still launching missiles at his formation. "They're clearly losing ships." His aide checked the casualty reports with growing horror. "Sir, we've destroyed 43 human vessels, but they've destroyed 61 of ours. They're trading 1-for-1, even while taking more damage." A human cruiser drifted past the main viewer, its hull split open like a broken egg. Quentel could see fires burning inside the ship, crew members working desperately to keep systems running. The ship was obviously dying. Then it fired one last salvo that crippled a Zephyrian battleship. "They don't fight like any civilized species," his weapons officer said quietly. "They fight like they're already dead and just want to take us with them." "No," his aide replied, understanding finally dawning. "They fight like something that learned survival on a death world." The news hit the Galactic Council chambers like a bomb going off. Emergency sessions were called across dozens of star systems as reports flooded in from the human sector. The Zephyrian Empire's invincible fleet, 50 ships representing centuries of advanced technology, had been completely destroyed by primitive Deathworlders, using crude weapons and impossible tactics. Council member Vekfa of the Altarian Republic slammed his scaled fist on the council table, his usually calm demeanor shattered. "You promised us an easy conquest, Verthin. You said these humans were barely more advanced than animals." Zephyrian Chancellor Verthin stood before the assembled representatives of 30 different species, his elegant robes torn and his confidence completely gone. Just days ago, he'd been boasting about adding human resources to the Empire's growing collection of conquered worlds. They are savages," he stammered, still trying to process what had happened. "But that's exactly what makes them so terrifying. We've been fighting civilized wars for so long, we forgot what real warfare looks like." The holographic display showed battle footage that had been recovered from surviving Zephyrian escape pods. Council members watched in stunned silence as human ships continued fighting while literally falling apart, their crews working in damaged sections exposed to space. "Look at this," Vorthin continued, pointing at the display. "Their ships took damage that should have disabled them completely, but they kept fighting. We destroyed their command centers, and they transferred control to backup locations. We breached their hulls, and they sealed the compartments and kept shooting." Representative Kalthara of the Peaceful Traders Alliance spoke up, her voice shaking. "But surely, they must have some weakness." Some diplomatic solution. They sent one. Message back to our ultimatum, Verthan replied bitterly. One word. No. No negotiation, no attempt to find middle ground. Just complete defiance. The chamber fell silent as species after species began reconsidering everything they thought they knew about these humans. The Deathworlders weren't just primitive savages. They were survivors who had learned to fight in conditions that would kill most civilized beings. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't know when to quit? Asked the representative from the Crystal Worlds. You don't, Verthan said quietly. You leave them alone and hope they do the same to you. Across the galaxy, military commanders were already pulling back patrol fleets from human space. Nobody wanted to be the next species to discover what happened when you threatened the Deathworlders' family. The humans had sent their message loud and clear. We're not looking for trouble, but we're ready for it. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. Admiral Hyan stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching as 3 sleek diplomatic vessels approached the edge of human space. These ships were different from the warships they'd destroyed, smaller, more elegant, flying white flags that meant the same thing in every language. We come in peace. The Galactic Council had finally decided to talk instead of threaten, Captain. Na joined him at the massive viewport, holding a tablet with the proposed treaty terms. Sir, they're offering everything we asked for. Complete recognition as a sovereign species, guaranteed independence for all human colonies, and formal apologies for the Zephyrian attack. Hugh nodded, but his expression remained serious. The negotiations had taken months of careful back-and-forth messages. The council representatives were terrified of saying the wrong thing and triggering another human military response. What about the other clauses? He asked. They've agreed to those too, Na replied, scrolling through the document. Any attack on human civilians will be considered an act of war against our entire species. They're also establishing a permanent buffer zone around human space. No alien military vessels allowed within 50 light-years of our colonies. Through the viewport, Hyun could see patrol ships from the newly formed human defense fleet maintaining their positions. These weren't the massive battle fleets that had crushed the Zephyrians, but they were a constant reminder. Every ship was crewed by veterans who had fought in that legendary battle, and their hulls still bore the scars of real combat. The galaxy had learned something important about humans in those 3 days of fighting. They'd discovered that humans didn't just build weapons, they built weapons designed to keep working even when everything went wrong. They'd learned that human ships could fight while falling apart, that human crews would rather die than surrender, and that threatening human families was the fastest way to unite the entire species against you. Think they'll actually keep the treaty? Nah. asked Hyan smiled as he watched the diplomatic ships maintain their respectful distance. Captain, 6 months ago, these aliens thought we were primitive savages they could push around. Now they're sending their best diplomats, just to make sure we don't get angry at them. The treaty signing would happen tomorrow, but everyone already knew the outcome. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, the hard way, in the darkness beyond. Other alien species continued their own patrols, carefully avoiding the borders of human space. They'd gotten the message loud and clear: mess with humans, and find out why they're called Deathworlders.